council were offering free sailing lessons to old age pensioners, and an elderly couple decided to go along to the council and sign up for, sailing classes. Anyway, they popped along to their local authority, went into the reception and said, oh, hello, we'd like to, take up sailing, please, on this scheme that the council's got. The receptionist says, yes, certainly. You go along the corridor, turn second right, then up a flight of stairs, then turn left, and then up another flight of stairs, and on the fourth door on the right, you should find the sailing class where you can sign up, you see. So anyway, they got completely and utterly lost. They were wandering around this bloody great local authority place, and they accidentally wandered into the marriage guidance counselling area, and they thought they got the right door, but they'd actually got the wrong door. It was a marriage guidance counsellor. So they knocked on the door and one said, come in, please. And as I walked in, she said, okay, take a seat. Now, when did you and your husband last do it? And the woman said, oh, yes, when was that, George? I think that must have been about 2005. She said, well, that's an awful long time, and why haven't you done it since then? Well, the first time my husband George was sick, and the second time his hat blew off.
Good evening and welcome to another exciting show. And tonight we got a new guest. It's Steve, the winged, and we're going to be very careful tonight not to say naughty words like tit and bum because we're on YouTube. Oh, I've said it now. Now, evening, Steve. And as you can guess,
hello.
Steve, of course, he is our Fockham Hall military attaché. That's it. Because the problem we've got with defence is defence keeps falling over, you see. So we need that propped up a bit. And so we got our military attaché. We've got our embassy up in Norfolk with Krista Gardner, and we've got one in Tyne Tees as well. That's I believe you're bringing Fockham civilization to the primitive peoples of this country. Anyway, Steve, welcome aboard. And
thank you for having me. Very pleased to meet you, and thank you for welcoming me to your show. And hello to the wide audience.
And he's got something in his beret which we're not allowed to mention on YouTube, but the first person in chat to get the correct answer will get a free 2-finger salute and raspberry to a politician of their choice, who they detest the most. And on that note, I've got some very sad news. I don't know whether I can get through this bottom that's quivering, getting choked. That Sadiq Khan, sorry, I almost said it, has been, I wouldn't say re-elected, but been selected again. Because if he got re-elected, well, I think I'm a banana, because everybody I've spoken to hates his guts. So there we go. He got honestly elected, didn't he, Steve? I don't think.
Well, I'm sure it's all done above board. It is the government. It is the mayor. They wouldn't lie.
No, but no, sorry, he's not the mayor. He's our gracious leader. I think
I should say
gracious, but leader. Yes. Anyway, yeah. I like your T-shirt. If you like, give us a quick flash of that. Another thing we can't say on YouTube. And right. Well, do you fancy going into chat first of all? We say hello to everybody, and then we get on with the show.
That would be good. I'm happy with that.
Okay. Right now, tonight, first of all, I don't know what's happened, but Robert came on. So he wrote a message in chat, and I think because it went into YouTube and not StreamYard, it's gone. It's disappeared. So please don't take offence. You can take a gate if you want, Robert. So sorry, mate. You were the very first on this show, so you get the prize, even though you can't be seen here. You see. Sounds like a bit of favoritism, doesn't it? But no, seriously. And we've got, first of all, we got Stephen the Truth Seeker, and I think he's replying to your picture that I put up. And I hope you managed to decipher the title of this, because I used the Old English long S, which of course you can't get in characters. So I put an F in its place, and it should be, it was like an F, but without the bar through it. So that was a lot. So if you read the F as an S, because it has to be lower, even a lowercase s, I think you could decipher what the title of this show is. Oh, and the one is an L, you see. And he said to your photograph, you'd be surprised who supports Boris. Yes. Yes, I know somebody that supports him, because he said, he saves me money on tax. Really? Or he saves money on tax. Paul Green says, I hope everyone is well. Looking forward to the show. Yes. Then we've got Mark Anthony. Evening, Eric Von Essex. Looking forward to the show. Intrigued by the title. Yes. Well, I hope I've explained it. And Cat Holly says, EV. W E EV. Do you work that? Can you work that one out, Steve? I can't.
Have we?
No, I went before the show. Hello, Stephen Truth Seeker. Cat Holly again says, evening all. Hope all are well, and please keep taking the tablets. I think you'll be okay there. And now, hello everyone. Now, Stephen Truth Seeker has come up with an SAS badge.
Where?
Have you been to Specsavers, mate? You know, yes, it could be. Yes, that mind you, you're a member of a FOCM regiment, aren't you? You're the Colonel in Chief, military attaché, and but that is the actual part of the headgear. You see.
Exactly. Can I just mention as well, to kind of mention to bring up his point? This badge represents the hardest regiment in the British Army. It's the soldiers against against.
Yes.
Say again.
Beginning with S.
Yeah. S.
And
A-S.
Hang on, I think he's right. In a other way.
So he's correct.
Stephen, I'll take back what I said about Specsavers. Would a note from my parents suffice? I'd have to go to the cemetery, but would that be sufficient? You know. So you're the winner.
Does he win the prize?
He wins the prize of a detested MP of his choice that we both stick two fingers up and blow a raspberry at. So there we go. So what could be better? You know, we've got camera. My camera never lies. Of course, everyone is voting for them. Not. Then we've got Ralph Winter. Hello, Ralph. Now we've got here, you've had one supporter in our show several times. You've had one supporter on your show several times. Huh? Okay. One supporter on your show several times. What's a parent supporter of Boris Johnson? Doubt it. Oh, well, I've probably... I deleted that comment. Oh, all right then. My eyes are bad though. Oh, I pick Tony Blair. Oh, so would I. So it's to Tony Blair.
Yeah.
There we are. Put two fingers.
I've got a couple of points for Tony Blair as well. I've got
right.
one very pertinent point for Tony Blair, but essentially two questions for Tony Blair. That's it.
Oh, that's it. And also, Toilet Tony, as he's known, because you know about Toilet Tony, don't you? Do you know about this?
No, that's a new one on me.
You don't? Well, I'll just say good evening, Chris the Gardener. Hello, Chris. Evening.
Hello, Chris.
The man that wears a fez with a foil around it, you see. He was.
Yeah, I recognise him from his previous videos.
Right. Now, no, Toilet Tony, he was in, I think it was 1981, caught in a lavatory in Longacre doing something to another man and was arrested. And here we are. Here he is. Cat's got it. Hang on. No, hang on. What was it? no, not, I've got the wrong one now. Cottaging in toilets. Yes, he's got a cottage industry, and because anyway, he was caught with his trousers down, and he was taken to what's the police station around there? I've forgotten it. And he used to work around there as well. Anyway, he's taken to the local police station, and he gave his middle name. And when he got into power, isn't it a shame? There was a fire and all the records were destroyed. That's slap my thighs, isn't that? But
Yeah.
I think we should capitalise on it. I mean, they should have a plaque there outside those toilets, and you could have an actor, a Blair lookalike, with his trousers down to pose with Japanese tourists. And they could have like sort of photographs in there of Toilet Tony, But anyway, on with the show. Now, Steve, you've had a very interesting time. And what got you into this situation of speaking out about what was really going on during the lockdown, basically? So can you give us a little bit of a background to it, and sort of, and obviously you are ex-military, but I know you can't really say too much about your career because it's, you were in quite a senior position. So
it's a secret.
It's a secret. Yes, that's right.
Yes.
You give Fockham military secrets away because it'd be on our website.
Exactly. Well, Fockham Hall is my favourite place to visit, just so you know. And just to kind of answer your question there, well, I got into the purpose of speaking out against criminal behaviour simply because I'm duty bound, and I certainly was duty bound as a member of the military to defend my nation and my countrymen from foreign and domestic threats. And you could say that everything that's happened in the last few years has been a threat to members of the country. I've actually got sworn an oath to defend that principle. So I'm not only morally wishing to express my understanding of the situation, I'm also theoretically culpable in my legal framework for my previous employment, which was the military. And just a word of note, you find that everybody in the military has sworn the same oath and comes under the same legal duties. And what I could say is perhaps members of the military need to reread their paperwork, reread the terms and condition, reread that oath of allegiance, and actually come to an understanding of where they fit into that.
Yes, I agree with you, because you're here to defend the United Kingdom, full stop. And I think there's a lot of disheartened military people, and also a lot of disheartened police officers, because the real ones who were here to maintain, this is the police, I believe the police are here to maintain peace, and i.e. Injury, loss or harm. They're here to protect us from criminals, full stop. They're not here as agents of private companies and who want to steal from us. They're not. That's not their job. Their job is and I heard, and this was on Richard Bode's show, and this was a chap who was a counsellor. Now, I haven't looked into this myself, but he seemed to know what he's saying. I think it was from the National Statistics Office that I think it was 94% of crime never gets solved. 94% failure rate. Horrendous. And with military, I think it is, I can never understand what we're doing in countries and wars that are nothing to do with us. You know, Ukraine's nothing to do with us. What's it to do with us? Nothing. And
well, I understand that perfectly, Chris. The reason we're getting involved is simply because of something called militarism. It's as simple as that. The world really needs to start raising its consciousness, raising its understanding. They've got no excuse for ignorance. Members of the armed forces and the police have got no excuse whatsoever to be ignorant of current affairs, current events, the current crisis affecting the whole of humanity. They've got no excuse other than willful ignorance to defend unholy and unlawful acts. And militarism is one of those things. In fact, militarism's been going on so long now that I think it's just established itself as being the norm. We've accepted the normality of militarism. We've accepted the normality of criminal, what, to the point where I'd say that a large proportion of humanity are kind of apathetic to the situation, literally couldn't care. And this is what people need to do, not only raise their understanding, raise their conscious understanding and appreciation, they need to raise their levels of care. And just to add to that a little bit, because you've mentioned the police are duty bound. They've got an oath, they've sworn an oath. What I find amongst the police and certainly the military is they're not defending what's right. They're defending their pensions. They're defending their monthly income by turning a blind eye. Each and every one of them. And I'll try not to get too irate on your show, Chris, but I would look. In fact, I'm going to address this to every single serviceman in the UK, and in fact, let's just call it the world. Every single policeman, every single soldier in the world, you need to have a word with yourself, every single one of you, because you are on the wrong side of history and you're defending lies and you are acting without honor. And I'll address that to every single person who's a policeman and a member of the military. And if you've got to come back with that, I'd kindly accept your groveling, nonsensical emails to explain why you're still on the wrong side of history.
yes, you've got a very good point there. And I think that what you did is exceptionally brave. It really is brave, because you went by your moral principles, and I think that bravery comes in different areas, and I think that to go against, shall we say, a group or anything like that is a very, for a moral stand, I really take my hat off to you, because I mean, we've got there's a chap for example, in Siam. He's one of the very few Brits there who, during the lockdown, he didn't wear a stupid face nappy and refused to comply. Now, in this country, it's bad enough. I mean, you was probably the same. I was the only one walking around the supermarket without a stupid face nappy on. And I was the only one that just would not, I just adamant, no way, I'm going to wear it. And this chappie is actually he's actually in Siam. And in a foreign country as well, where the people of that country are very, very compliant, and they do everything what they're told. That takes guts. And I think what you did, we can't really go into the full details of it, but you stood your ground. And I think that, and against the shall we say, the masses, that really is something that is a moral stand. So that's very admirable. And I mean, was you the only one, or can you answer that question, that sort of took this moral stand?
I wasn't at first, and there was a small cohort, a very small cohort of individuals who I wouldn't say had the same stance as me. Again, I don't know for sure because I don't know the motivations behind everybody. But a number of fellow soldiers were concerned, and obviously, I work with men who are at the peak of their fitness, athletes, highly fit, highly motivated, people who look after their bodies. People who work out, people who don't eat, the wrong foods, don't drink to excess, certainly wouldn't want to poison themselves. However, and I'll say this in total criticism over my command chain, over my medical chain, coerced, manipulated, threatened, you could say, because I had the same treatment. It was semi-threatening. You'll potentially be unable to serve. You'll get RTU, which is return to unit. You will effectively not be fit for soldiering in my unit. And I can't say this is the same for the entire British Army. But I would suspect that most units within the British military have had the offer of the of the medication. But there was a small number in my unit who abstained. They all got the or what would you call it? The encouragement. Say again.
Toxic arm brew.
Yeah, I think most of them eventually succumbed. Of course, I'd say the majority of them didn't have a Scooby's idea that there was something harboring intent to cause ill harm as a result of it. But some of them were obviously concerned, but eventually fell for the encouragement, which was no jab, Aru. No job, Aru.
Yeah.
And I find myself. Sorry, Chris, just to finish that off, I found myself eventually in the where I am now, the no job. So thanks, government. Thanks, Army. Really look after you. Leave no man behind, unless, of course, he hasn't accepted the toxic arm brew. Did he call it?
Toxic arm brew, yes.
Yeah, because we wouldn't want to. We'll save everybody. But if you ain't got that, well, you're not coming on the helicopter back to base.
Well, something I found out from my father, he was a conscript during the war, is the way the hierarchy, so especially the forces, treat you is that when you're young, you're fit, and you're of use to them, that's great. And they'll give you all the promises imaginable. But once you have you've finished your useful purpose, then they put you on the scrap heap. They couldn't give a damn. That's it. Goodbye. And the way they treat disabled is beyond. Well, it's vile, and I have no time, neither my father, for the British Legion, because I don't think they're the forces' friend. Personally, I think they are a government. To me, they're propaganda. That's the way I look on it. But the thing is that so you've got no work at the moment. I mean, it must be financially, must be very difficult for you. And I don't wish to pry; it's none of my business.
No problem. Well, it's taken a while, but I'm probably in the process of losing my house now. Yeah, seriously. I mean, I knew this at the start, and I mean, you said just a couple of questions ago, that you admire my bravery. I'm going to say I'm not being brave at all. I'm doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is not necessarily being brave. I'll tell you who is brave. Let's say the old dear who went into supermarkets without wearing the ritualistic face nappy, and all the other people who stood their ground, knowing that the whole of society was against them. I was a hardcore, steely-eyed deliverer of death and destruction, a soldier for the British Army in a plum unit, I'm expected to be pretty hardcore in my demeanor, in my physical robustness, and my mental stamina. To me, not wearing a face nappy is not too difficult. Believe it or not, I've had more encounters, scrapes, you could say, measures of violence and threats as a result of not wearing a face nappy than I have on the battlefield. And that's ridiculous. So I've had more threats and fights by shop assistants, bus conductors, and other oafs who seem to think that they've got a God-given right to force other people to cooperate with horse manure instructions by wearing face nappies. Just add to that, I've seen some of the hardest men, the tough guys of Hereford, wearing face nappies, looking like complete wimps. I actually thought they were going to. I thought they were taking the mickey when they were all walking around camps wearing face nappies. I thought, hey, are you just doing this for a joke? So what I'd say, Chris, is I admire the people who stood the ground.
We're very modest.
And sadly, they've got more balls and determination, more guts and bravery than the entire British Army have.
Well, it's very modest, but you know that is excellent. I think by virtue of what we're saying is that as we're on YouTube, obviously we've got to be careful what we say, and I think we need a follow-up show where we can open up a lot more. And I think, you know, if it's okay with you, Steve, do you fancy coming on a Rumble? Obviously not tonight because you're on YouTube, but on another show on Rumble, because I think that's necessary. Because
I can probably speak more openly there.
That's right, because we're both being very careful what we're saying, and because, you know, YouTube, I don't know what it is. They seem to have got a special. They got me under a microscope, I think. This, so now, should we go back into chat again? Because we've got quite a lot here in chat, and I've lost myself. And where are we? It's really picking up in chat now. Now we got here. Now this is an interesting one. That's why I've not been on here. Steve the Truth Seeker says, that's why I've not been on here lately, because I don't want to see whose face. Chris, your show has been infiltrated. That's it? Well, I'm fascinated. Send me an email, because I want to know, have I been infiltrated? I don't know. So, you know.
I don't know what that means. Am I the infiltrator?
No, you're not the infiltrator. You guest on here. Somebody that's been on in the past.
All right, okay.
No, it's not me. Right. Hatchie's 22. Hi, you all. Oh, okay. Now
that's a very particular number. Did you know there was 22 bones in the human skull? There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. There's 22 pathways on the Holy Sephiroth.
Wow.
It's an interesting number.
It is.
Do you know that? Here's another number for you. Did you know that 22, of course, is the Special Air Service Regiment? There's also there's 3 regiments in the Special Air Service. Did you know? Some of the viewers might know that. There's 21, 22, and 23. 2, 1, 2, 2, and 2, 3. And do you know what? If you add those numbers together, you get the number of ignorance, which is 6 and 6. 6 is the number of ignorance, and 66 is the number of the 3 regiments added up. Numbers are a very vital piece of something I talk about quite often, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with the term the occult.
Yes. Yeah. And also numerology.
Numerology.
Yes.
Numerology is the building blocks of the universe.
Yes. So, this is interesting because that show, that program, what was it? People that stare at goats or something like that, done by the American military.
Is that a film with George Clooney from like 20 years ago?
No, it's a documentary that was. 20 years ago, and it's about sort of psychological warfare. And the Americans use psychological warfare.
Right. I remember there was a film a few years back with a similar title.
Yeah, it wasn't a film, it was an actual documentary. It was really weird, very, very weird. Now, we've got one here from, where are we? The British police, this is Stephen Truth Seeker, are the new army trained by the country we're not allowed to criticise their army.
You can't even mention.
Yes, you must have mentioned, because I think they're training our army now, aren't they? They're part of our army now.
Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but the country you're not allowed to mention, which is, of course, is named after three gods of the ancient world, Isis, Ra, and El. I'm not sure if your viewership were aware of that. Okay, Isis, Ra, and El. Isis was the moon god, the female deity. Ra, of course, is the sun god, the male deity, and El is the electrifying, the force that binds the two, the spirit force. That's where we get the word electricity, elite, election. El, another name for God, a word for God.
So that country is three. Let's get this going. 3 words. 3. Was it deities? Added up.
Wow. Isis, Ra, El. Funny that, isn't it? You'd think it was almost made up. You'd think that country was made up. Here's what we can say, though. I can't. I mean, I don't know what the point is. He's saying there the police are the new army trained by the you know who. I mean, I'd like to see some elaboration on that. But what I would say is pretty much the British Army, whether they know it or not, are essentially part of the campaign efforts for Benjamin. Am I allowed to mention this? Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign efforts.
Oh,
that's who the British military work for. They work for the Rothschilds.
Yes.
So now that, in a sense, the army have done me a big favor by not giving me blood money from the Rothschilds. So, winner, thank you.
Wow. And also, I think we know what Ukraine is really about. How can I put this in code? I think it's enlarging a country that we're not allowed to criticize. I think that sums it up, isn't it? Because that's where a lot come from. The country.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, but we'll be able to mention it on Ruffle.
If anyone, and I'm sure your audience are pretty much aware of this, and if they're not, there will be. But I'm pretty sure many people in this chat listening will be aware that warfare isn't the organic, it happened natural process. This is the natural consequence of two bodies having a disagreement. This is all horse manure. It's tripe. The whole, I'd say, warfare probably for the last 250 years has all been based on, well, everybody knows the banking fraternity. That's what warfare is. You can make excuses till the end of time, but that's what it all is. It's nonsense. 30 years I've been in the army, in the forces. You want to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about? I don't line my beret with this for nothing.
Wow. Well, fascinating. And well, also the Rothschilds bankrupted this country after the Battle of Waterloo. Literally bankrupted it and got away with it because they got where Britain, they had a chap on horseback that came back to bring the news back. The Rothschilds used pigeons, and they got the news that we'd won, and then they actually owned the press, and the press rolled out that we'd lost. So the stock exchange smashed. They bought up shares at a cheap rate, and then they got the news through when the bloke on the horse came here that we won.
Yeah. And do you know what? I would say you know, and I might be completely incorrect here, but I would probably say 99% of any serving soldier probably hasn't got a clue about that whatsoever. Probably haven't got a clue about the Rothschilds at all. And if not, get reading some history books. Read some of the well, I was going to say read Tragedy and Hope, but that's probably a big ask for anybody, to be fair. 1,100 pages, I think that one. It's a bit of a big book to be reading, but anyone in the military can get on the internet, type in the Rothschilds and start reading the so-called tinfoil hat conspiracies behind their entire reason for being. And if they're still proud to serve after that, they really have to have a serious word with themselves.
And what about this? Yeah, sorry, please continue. I was making Johnny.
No, well, I was just going to say, I've said this many times to people. It's easy to convince yourself or to excuse oneself for blaming all of this information to be nothing but tinfoil hat conspiracies. I would like some of these grown adults to actually, can I mention a word, grow a pair of bollocks on your show?
I think you can say grow a pair of bollocks, yes. I think we got away with that, yes.
Okay.
I don't, perhaps we shouldn't.
Well, you've heard it now. So again, I'm addressing the entire British Army. Grow a pair, you bunch of pussies, because you need to start educating yourself. And you need to stop acting like clowns. Stop being dumb. Start learning some correct history. Start learning some moral values. Simple as that. I'm pretty confident everybody in the army is capable of doing that. That's all I've done. And I'm a thick Geordie.
No, far from that. Far from that. Because, I mean, we used to have a massive navy and a smallish army, which we're an island, which is logical. You have a big navy to defend the islands, and you have a smallish army because you don't, your army is there to in case the invaders break through the navy, but they wouldn't have done because it was so huge. But this is why we was caught in the First World War. Our army was too small in the First World War, and that's why the navies, part of the reason why the navies didn't clash. But now this is quite interesting what you were saying though about how the army has actually changed. And I personally do, I can say this because I've never been in the army, but I've got the feeling it's been infiltrated. That's my personal view. But
it's what, sorry?
It's been infiltrated. I believe it's been infiltrated. And I think
what by or who by?
Left wing. I think it's communist ideological subversion. If you look at Yuri Bezmenov, he talks about ideological subversion, and I think the whole of society has been infiltrated.
He had something called a 4-point subversion strategy, I believe, which is
correct. Yes,
I would agree entirely that do you know what? Let's cut to the chase. Not just the British military. Let's call it the police. Let's even say the NHS. Let's say the government itself has all fallen to left-wing subversion. You could say left-wing subversion. Well, what's the difference between that and right-wing subversion? Well, essentially, it's just two different levels of the same thing, which is a complete collapse of moral values. This is a big picture. Whether it's left-wing subversion, well, let's call it for what it is. It's a reduction in conscious moral values. That's what the world is suffering from. But I agree with you there. Yuri Bezmenov mentioned, I forget what year he came out with his YouTube video. Say
1983.
Which is just a year before this T-shirt came out.
Yes. Yes.
Which is, bang on the money, isn't it?
It's spot on. And also, I'll tell you another book I guess you're very aware of, is War is a Racket by General Smedley Butler.
Exactly.
And
It's funny
he
how you
died
don't
very
learn
young.
that in recruit training.
I beg your pardon?
I'm saying it's funny how they don't share that one in recruit training in the military.
Isn't it? It's very odd. And also, he died very young. Isn't that strange? In his 50s. And the thing about it is you can download it free of charge. So if you're in the military, you want to download it, it's free of charge,
Well,
PDF.
I would recommend that book to every single serving member of the British Army. In fact, everybody in the military. Read Smedley Butler's book. Then, you know, if you're so big and hard and you think you know all, read his book. Then you can dissect it, criticize it, and then tell me or convince yourself that you're doing the right thing for the good of humanity.
Well,
quite simple.
Well, that's it. And I think that a saying that I've always had is wars are fought by forgotten heroes for lost causes. And I think that could be said for almost every war. I mean, who gives a damn about Aden? Who gives a damn about Vietnam, which the Americans fought in? And also what the British fought in? Because people are not aware that Britain was the first that was involved in the Vietnam War in 1945. And who cares about that now? I mean,
well, I would say none of them have been for lost causes. They've all been for one cause, and it's always been a financial gain for the wealthy elite. It's just, we're in the 21st century and we're still, you know, people, let's say intelligent, educated people still haven't grasped these concepts yet. It's a complete racket. I forget what year he wrote his book, Mr. Smedley Butler. It hasn't changed. Nothing's changed because people are too dumb, people are too ignorant, people are too apathetic to actually do anything about the situation. I mean, I'll address this to the entire YouTube viewership. If anybody on YouTube wants to stop war, it's very, very simple. Don't have a government. If you want to stop war overnight, do not have a government.
Yeah.
But you keep voting for the idiots. You keep voting for them. So what you're voting for is for your young men, your young women to go off, pilfer land or resources or political aims from other foreign countries, usually third world, usually ones with a more destitute means of defense, in order to pilfer and line the pockets of your banking fraternity, your billionaire, jet-setting elite. That's it. You want to stop it? You want to stop your young men getting killed unnecessarily? Don't have a government.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know that more people statistically have been killed by their own government than all the wars put together? Just think about it.
Yeah, I can give a figure on that. 230 million people have died at the hands of fighting aged young men in the militaries, in armies since the turn of the century. 230 million. That's a lot of people, isn't it? That's a lot of people. Yeah, you know, I'd probably even say that most of them, I don't know what percentage, have been civilians. So you want to stop civilians getting killed and injured? Well, stop going to war. And if you want to stop going to war, stop voting for idiots called the government. There's one thing speaking of the government, Chris, there's one thing I often mention when I'm talking to people. If I'm speaking publicly, I'll say, well, does anybody actually know what that word means? Break it down into its Latin context, which is gubernare mentis, and it means mind control. And I think it actually got changed in the Collins Dictionary in the 50s, because obviously knowing that that word meant mind control is a little bit probably hard for them to consider. But then I also mentioned, what does the word parliament, where the government sit, where they work out all their planning, what does that word mean? Well, let's break that down into its French context. Parler means to speak, and the word men or mentir means lies. So the mind controllers speak lies. Now, does that make anybody stop and think? Does that maybe change your understanding when you go to vote, and when you think you've got a democracy? And I don't think people seem to want to fight to preserve democracy, but I don't even think the majority of people know what that means. It means mob rule, and
yes, you're speaking my language.
Democracy is a mob rule, so it doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what you think. It's what the majority, let's say what the majority think, but which majority we're talking about? It's the brainwashed, mind-controlled majority who are quite happy to accept people who speak lies for a living, parliaments who speak lies. So this mob rule is probably best described as, let's have a couple of sheep and let's have a pack of wolves. And then let's ask a question, what's for dinner? That's what democracy is. Wolves and a couple of sheep deciding what to eat for dinner.
Spot, absolutely, you summed that up perfectly. And I've often said that really they are USURY usually puppets, because that's all they're there for, to keep that scam going. Because really, all we really need is a handful of fully accountable civil servants, because you can have civil servants to run things. That's it. And they've got to be fully accountable. That's all you need. Because I get the feeling governments hate our guts. They seem to really detest us. They want to get rid of us. But back into chat, there's somebody here you might know. Nathan.
Oh, hello, Nathan.
Hiya, Steve, Chris, Eric, Krista Gardner, and all the crew. Apologies, I'm running a little late. Oh, well, never mind. That's life, isn't it? You know, no lines this week, though. By the way, don't tell him, but he's on next week. But I haven't told him because, you know, it'd be a surprise for him. You know, so keep it between yourself. So, Steve, my mate, this is Krista Gardner, so Steve, my mate, who's in RSM, in the artillery, took his wishes he didn't. He said the uptake with his lot was pretty much 100% because they do what they're told.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, I can't say statistics. I would say that every single person from my squadron took the same,
you know what,
arm venom. Yeah, all of them.
William's toxic arm brew.
Yeah, the toxic arm brew. All of the blokes I know took it. All of them or the ones who weren't so keen were all kind of coerced, heavily coerced, because I had the same treatment to the point where I can't soldier unless I take it. Simple as that. What the military have done with me is completely abhorrent. I mean, the only saving grace really is I've come away still a pure blood, whereas my workmates didn't. So I still say I've had the better deal, even though I was completely kicked out of Dodge. Just to add some meat onto that, I wasn't allowed to step foot in any military establishment because I was classed as something called a health vector, i.e., I may as well have been a leper. So you can't come in with your leprosy, even though you've been tested and you haven't got leprosy. You can't come in, you can't step foot and threaten, false health.
It's bonkers, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, it's totally and utterly bonkers. And what got me is when you saw the government, they were posing with their, what I call sanitary towels over their mouths. And then when the cameras started to turn away, they took them off, didn't they? And they all sort of having a chat with each other and they had parties and things like that. But I think also what shook me is what happened in elderly people's homes, where it was beyond cruelty. People were dying without their relatives near them, alone. Horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Now we've got here Hachi Camera himself is we're in troubled times. I've had heap big powwow this afternoon in southern England. Waking funeral thing awake the woke. Yes, waking the woke. Yes. Now let's have a look down here. Now we've got here Stephen Truthseeker. There was never any law to wear a a sonnet retell over your mouth. How could there be if you think about it? What happens when you take the thing off? You know what? You're breaking the law. It's silly. I agree with you. And also people who were actually done for sitting on a park bench. Yeah. And the strange thing is, I mean, during that time, I went out on my bike because I don't go to a gym. My exercise is my push bike. And I went out and it was unbelievable. There's no cars on the road at all. It was just deserted. I mean, brilliant for cycling. But I sat down on a bench to to sort of watch the world go past and all that. And it went through my mind. Do you realise what I was doing is totally illegal? Sitting down on a bench. And loads of benches had loads of tape across them to stop you sitting down. But I went and sat on the tape, But it's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. It really was. I think that was the time when this country went completely loopy.
Yeah. I'll have to tell you what I, after your little chat thing, I'll have to tell you what I did during lockdown.
Okay. Now, Camera says, yes, Steve, our forces are expected to be hard and tough, but they are also expected to be subservient to the elite wankers who can barely stand up without the assistance of the rest of us. Yes.
You get a big thumbs up for me for that. That's exactly right. The forces are completely subservient. You couldn't have said it more politely. As are the police. And I'll just add a little bit to this. The police and the military do not serve the people. Fundamentally, what we've seen in the last 4 years is the police and the military serve these people you've described so eloquently. They serve their masters. They don't serve the people. They're not here to protect the nation. They're here to protect the interests of their elite anchors.
And I think that they kind of, the police are hated where they never used to be. I mean, you used to have the local Bobby walking around, and he knew what was going on. He knew who the criminals were. He'd go and drink in a pub in the local, and he knew who was the good people and who was the bad people. Village Bobby was a mound of information, and also the press used to be like detectives. They would always go and have a drink with the police, which they don't do now, and they would pass information to each other and help each other and scratch each other's back. They just don't do that. I think the police are more interested if you say a word wrong, or if you've upset someone by misgendering them or something,
Oh yeah. Do you know, I've had quite a few run-ins with the cops at protests and what have you. If one good thing over the last 4 years is what it has done is it's exposed the police for what they are. It's exposed the military for what they are. But do you know what I would say? Who's the more brain dead between the military and the cops? Well, it's hats off to the cops. You guys couldn't get more brain dead and subservient to nonsense if you tried. It's physical. If you got robots would have more humanity in them than the cops. And you're exactly right. The run-ins I've had with the cops has been, protests, for example, and they try to arrest me or claim I've said something regarding a disability or something along those lines in order to provoke me into some crazy horse manure. so they can stick cuffs on me. Get a grip of yourselves, you bunch of dim-witted, order-following numpties. And I've worked with the cops lots. In your little, do you know what? I'll not even mention in the capacity I've worked with them in. But all nice blokes, don't get me wrong, and several of my friends, and I'll say it right to your faces. Several of my friends are cops, and I'll say it right to your face. In fact, I'll say it to the entire 100,000 members of the police. Get a grip of yourselves, learn some correct history, become a conspiracy theorist, start thinking about morality, objective morality, start growing a conscience, start growing some brain cells. Because what I see of the cops is you are completely dumb, ignorant maniacs, a menace to society. And frankly, the country, the world will be a safer place if you completely disband this complete illusionary entity called the police. Disband it, disband the military, disband the government. And if that sounds like I'm talking a load of crap, quite frankly, you need to start educating yourselves. People in the world need to educate themselves, because the government, the education system, colleges, universities are not going to do this for you. They're not ever going to teach you about objective morality. They're not going to teach you something called natural law. They're not going to tell you how society actually functions. They're going to keep you in the dark so you can keep on paying your taxes. Sorry, I'm having a ranty moment.
Go ahead. You're actually, we're on the same page. I 100% agree with you.
Oh, happy days.
And I think that the big problem with all this is that it's people thinking for themselves, but that's what they don't want. They don't want people thinking for themselves. That's the last thing they want. But the last real, I look on it, putting the Spanish Armada aside, the last real enemy that we fought, I think, a moral war against was 1066, because the Normans, they won. They enslaved us. They took over our wealth. They took everything. They changed our culture, the lot. And now we're in World War III, and because we are at war, there's no ifs and buts. It's a war against our minds. And we're being invaded by people in rubber boats. And how comes we could keep the German army out in 1940, but we can't keep people in rubber boats out today? I mean, it's bonkers, absolute bonkers. We are being invaded. No ifs, no buts about it. And there is
it's a planned invasion, though. I'm sure I'm sure I don't need to tell you or anybody on this chat. It's obviously stage managed, planned invasion, Kalergi plan, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Oh, you're right.
It's interesting you should mention 1066, because there's that number again. Anything with a combination of the number 6 always strikes my interest, and it's interesting that 1066, obviously 66, 666 combinations. These combinations add power to the mix. So 2 6s, 66. And what happened to Harold? Did he not get poked in the eye with an arrow? Isn't that? That's right. Excuse me for giving the old demonic signaling, but what happened there? He got struck in the eye of the Illuminati, because this one eye symbology has went back since the dawn of mankind. It's went back to ancient Egyptian times. It's went back since the dawn of history. And isn't it funny that this is one of the concepts children get taught in school? Harold 1066 got shot in the eye, injured, killed by shot in the eye, one eye. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the left eye, because this is the symbology behind it. But what is curious as well about 1066 is it was heralded by an astrological event, which was a comet.
Yes, Halley's Comet.
Halley's Comet, heralded, because this is when the let's just say that was one of the new world orders where there was fundamental changes in the alignment of our society, of our structure. When and don't quote me on this because my history isn't that great, but there was a comet that heralded a major battle which changed the kingship of the nation, changed the structure of England of at the time, i.e. a new world order. And what's happening now? Now, what I would say is, and this might be complete made up as far as I'm concerned, because everybody probably knows what NASA stands for, never a straight answer. But NASA announced it was something like March 2020, I believe, there was a comet to herald the new world order that they were helping to initiate. March 2020, it was called the comet Neowise. Do you recall that at all?
I remember that, but I also remember when Halley's Comet came back, and that was about 20 years ago. And that,
right.
And when that came, I saw a massive change afterwards in our culture, in our society, a big change.
Because you could say the principles.
I'll check the date when it happens. So carry on. I'll just check it.
Well, without wanting to get too carried away on occult themes, but the whole functioning of the universe is governed by astrology, not astronomy, astrology, the science of the stars and the heavens. It all has bearing and meaning. I mean, I follow world events quite closely, not in the news, I might add. The only time I watch the news is on March the 22nd. And I might, if there's time in the chat, I'll mention the reasons for that. In fact, let's just quickly mention it now. Do you remember when lockdown was announced?
Yes, it was March 2020, I think it was.
Yeah, March the 22nd to be more precise, which is known as the Satanic Season of Sacrifice. It's one of the most important, prominent dates in the Satanic calendar. And you could say, well, that's a bit of a coincidence. You know, I'm not going to read too much into that. But then you could say, well, when was the second lockdown announced? And I'm pretty sure many people would remember it was actually Halloween night. And Halloween, of course, it's good fun for the kids. Most people consider it to be just a little kiddie's daft, innocuous, you know, time to dress up like monsters and what have you, but it's actually a very, very particularly important date in the Satanic calendar. So that's two dates when lockdown was announced, which occurred on Satanic holy dates. Bit bizarre, that, is it not?
It's very bizarre. And a very strange thing is Halley's Comet made an appearance in 1910. And people thought the world was to an end, yes. And then 4 years later, we had the outbreak following the Federal Reserve Act in 1914 of First World War. It made the second appearance in 1986. And a few years later, the Berlin Wall came down. Interesting.
Yeah.
And that culture changed because when that came down, everything seemed to change. Not for the better, but for the worst. I'm not saying the Cold War was a good thing. No, it wasn't. But it's something odd. Something that was a pivotal year after that. And it seems 4 years after it appears, or when it appears, something dramatic changes.
Yeah, so always does. Has done since the dawn of man. Simply because, like I said earlier, astrology is the science of the universe. All these buffoons who seem to think that physical sciences have got it cracked, such as, and again, I'm going to guess that some of your audience aren't too, well, what's the word, convinced by the theory of gravity or the theory of evolution. It's funny how all these things are classed as theories, and there's theories for a reason, but we take them for granted as being real. But it's quite bizarre that, let's just say, Isaac Newton was an alchemist. You know, he might have been a scientist at some stage, but formerly he was an alchemist. An alchemist in search of the philosopher's stone. But he invented gravity in 1666. And remember that number 6 is the number of ignorance. And of course, 666 is the number of the beast. 1666 was the year of the Great Fire of London, and the same year when some unholy acts emanated in order to enslave the nation. And I'm sure your viewership's aware of some of that. But in 1666, the poisoned apple allegedly fell on Isaac Newton's head, where he came up with a calculation which happens to be 6.66 times 10 to the power of -11 kilograms squared over meters squared, which gives us the gravitational constant, which some people quite often paraphrase as being 666 newtons. Isn't that a curious number?
It is. That is interesting because, I mean, well, I call it the Great Fraud of London, because I've spoken to Professor Moss, Gloria Moss, who studied it, and the fire went in a different direction to the wind. Weird.
Funny
And
that.
what she's looked into is it was started deliberately so they could rebuild London. And it's actually on BitChute. We did it a couple of years ago. And there's a school teacher that contacted us, and she showed her children that, and down in Cornwall, and it's very educational. And apparently there was a plaque in Pudding Lane where it's supposed to have started, where the monument is, and they changed that plaque in the 19th century because it said a little bit of truth. But back to numerology, did you know that the Second World War was all 369s? Just look at it. If you look at the numbers around the Second World War, it's all 369.
Yes.
Those figures.
Yeah.
Mr. got in 1933. I think it was April, though, which was the 4th month. So that doesn't fit in quite right. But when you look at it, the war was declared on the 3rd and the 9th, 1939.
All very curious numbers, aren't they? In fact, do you know what? Just to kind of clarify a little bit more on some of the dates that let's just say wars and battles have occurred on. I mean, if I had some of my notes in front of me, I could probably rattle a few off with a little bit more confidence. But I don't know. Let's mention the First World War. Now, probably a lot of people are of the understanding now that Franz Ferdinand was shot by a member of an occult Masonic society known as the Black Hand, which is a little bit bizarre in itself. But let's talk about a key battle in the First World War, which was, of course, the Battle of the Somme, which occurred. And again, I don't know the year, I can't remember, but the date that occurred was the 20th of July. Now, if anyone watched the fake moon landings, they'll know that the 20th of July was quite a prominent date. In fact, lots of things have happened on the 20th of July. But why is that interesting? Because again, it's a very important satanic holy date. But the Battle of the Somme concluded on the 322nd day of the year, November the 18th. It was the day that Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, died. The Illuminati, by the way, incidentally, had their birthday on May the 1st. May the 1st, 1776 was the formation date of the Bavarian Illuminati, which, of course, this isn't a made-up conspiracy thing. This, you could even go on to the fountain of lies called Wikipedia and find that one out. But, of course, we're in early May now. And again, I'm quite happy to mention a little bit about what goes on in May. Beltane. I don't know if you've come across that term before, but, November the 18th is the 322nd day of the year. Now, that's quite a prominent day in satanic, occult, dark occult understanding. And it's curious how that battle concluded on that date. Now that in itself means probably absolutely nothing until you see a long lineup of other historical battles and war which have occurred to coincide precisely with certain satanic holy dates, almost as if some of these things were done deliberately.
That's interesting. That's fascinating.
Just to qualify that a little bit more, and I mean, like I said, if I had some of my notes with me, I could reel off a whole load of things. But when do we celebrate Armistice Day? It's the 11th of the 11th at 11 a.m. And of course, if you add those numbers together, we get the number 33, which is, to anybody who's in understanding of Masonic secret societies, will understand the inherent values of that number. So is that accidental? Are all of these coincidences accidental?
Interesting. And also, the Battle of the Somme was in 1916, and that incidentally was the year that they introduced conscription into this country, because the first 2 years it was a volunteer army. So that's, and also if you add up the beginning of the First World War, it comes to 68, and if you add up the dates of the beginning of the Second World War, that comes to 68 as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen that before.
Yeah, that was on an earlier program, and also when it started in Ukraine, that adds up to 68. And I said there's possibly something going to happen. I think it was either last Saturday or the Saturday before, but bugger all happened. So because that added up to 68, so I was a bit wrong there. But
well, the Ukraine, I'm pretty sure that the invasion of the Ukraine occurred, I think it was February the 25th or 24th, rings a bell, which again, that's another date in the satanic calendar. It's known as St. Walpurgis Day or something along those lines, which again, it's not proof of a conspiracy, but it's very, it fits into a certain understanding, certain algorithm of key events happening on key dates. Just so happens as well, it was it the day after a certain illness was forgotten about on the news? Hey, let's forget about this world-changing illness for an afternoon, and the following day, let's kick off with a big war. Funny that, isn't it?
It is strange, isn't it? I mean, I often look as if it's like the news, mainstream news. Who decides what is news? To me, it's a huge pantomime. But
pantomime is the very word I was looking for.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't have a television. I don't watch the telly. The only time I listen to the radio is if I'm in my car, and I might put Classic FM on just to sort of listen to it or something like that. And all it is it seems to be a government shall we say government financed adverts, allegedly.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, again, I'd like to think your viewership are all over this, but the wider audience, if you haven't reached the conclusion that you're getting fed a complete crock, a pantomime, a soap opera, a psyop, to keep you dumb and misinformed, then really there's no hope for some of these people. But I stopped watching the news. It's got to be at least 10 years ago now. Completely, I stopped watching not only the news, I stopped watching the TV.
Same here. Mine is about 14 years ago. I just couldn't.
All right, brilliant.
Do you find, I don't know whether you're the same, I can't actually stomach it now.
Yeah.
I was in the back. They got this bloody great TV screen, and it's pumping out News 24. And of course, it's like mesmerizing. Your eyes are naturally drawn to it. You can't and all it is, excuse my language, arseholes walking towards the camera. What is all this? Blah, 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 blah. And they're so bloody smug little bastards, And I thought, how can people watch this crap? It's immature crap. And it wasn't really news. It's just
makes me feel ill.
It does make me feel ill, yeah.
I don't know about you, Chris, but it took me about, I'd say I noticed that about a year of not watching TV, after about a year, my brain actually started to work. I actually physically felt as if I could rationalize using my own brain after about a year. It took as long as that.
That's what they call it, tell, lie, vision. Break it into 3 words, tell, lie, vision, you know. But Stephen Truthseeker has said YouTube have changed the rules about you can talk about it now. Have they? I don't trust you.
Didn't even know you couldn't mention that. Sorry.
Well, I haven't mentioned it because I'm keeping on I'm a goody. I'm keeping on the good best side.
Well, if we're allowed to mention the ritualistic face muzzles, I was on exercise with in fact, it was quite a big exercise, international partners and what have you, in the UK. I'll not go into any detail because I'll get wrong, like seriously wrong. But because I've signed a contract which kind of you get the crack. It's a bit like YouTube, but the violation measures are a little bit more hostile, should we say? I was not wearing a face nappy, but my chain of command kind of noticed. Somebody told them whatever it was, but a number of them got me in for like an interview without coffee kind of thing, and told me that if I didn't wear a face nappy and go along with it, then I would have to be kind of sent home off the exercise. Unfortunately, the day after, I developed a mystery illness, mystery conditions. And I had to go home anyway. So I never got the luxury of wearing a face nappy. But do you know, I was mentioning I've been to several shops and faced more battles than I have in proper battles. More battles from shop assistants and restaurant staff, bus conductors. I remember probably the most laughable was I was in, I think it was a supermarket, and the two store staff actually phoned the police. And I said, "Oh, well, you're phoning the police. Well, I'll just wait for them." And so I waited in the shop for about 10 or... Yeah, I was in the shop for about 10 or 15 minutes. They refused to serve me. I was just stood in the shop and said, "I'll wait for the cops." In the end, 10 minutes later, I got bored with the whole situation before the cops actually turned up. But several shops this happened in, and I think have I got "fight me" written on my forehead because several young, and these were mostly youngsters. One of them threatened to fight me outside the shop. I'm like, you probably don't want to pick a fight with me, mate. I like hurt people for a job, and you want to fight me. I'm like, let's not go there. Yeah, but several shops, Chris, people wanted to fight me.
Really? I tell you something, though, my dad would say they would end up not being able to have children afterwards.
Yeah,
that could be. They could then they could be one of 300 sexes, couldn't they? That could be they could identify as a mind you, they might be able to sing a high note after. I actually saw something that made me laugh years ago when I was a teenager. I was in a Wimpy. You remember the Wimpies? I think I still got Wimpies. I don't know, but I was in a Wimpy shop with a couple of other my friends, and there was a fella looking at the bottom of a newspaper, and all you saw was this sort of like head, and so he looked like a small bloke. And you know those long seats they had in Wimpy bars, and he was sitting there, and it was a time of, I think, a revival of rockers, and these, the old comb teenagers walked in, they're sort of like this, and all sort of you know, putting their shoulders over and all this. And they got this bloke, and they were walking behind the seat, and they grabbed his newspaper, and so, you know, it was a Guardian or something. I can't remember what it was. And then suddenly this bloke got up. It was like, if you had Jeff Capes.
Yeah. A big unit.
It wasn't fat. It was muscle. And it was that moment where everything went silent. We all sort of sat around watching, and people were looking around, and the blokes, you know, turning the hamburgers at the bar going like this. He went over to this kid with one hand, lifted him up, got his newspaper back and said, "Why don't you be a good boy and sit down and eat your din-dins?" And just let him go. And then went back and read the newspaper. It was classic. I was, you know, we were going, but we didn't want to laugh because the bloody three yobbos was going to pick on us. But I've never forgotten that. Yeah, and he handled it perfectly. I've got a feeling he was military or ex-military, because the way he handled it, he was so calm. He said, "Why don't you sit down? Be a good boy and eat your din-dins." And that sort of
hilarious.
And he was about that high. It shrugged.
Yeah.
And also, you didn't hear a word from him. But I think that really, I don't want to put it, but I get the feeling from an outsider that wokeism or woke has got into the military and eaten into it. Big.
It's got everywhere. Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen that Monty Python scene, which is classic, where a guy walks into the senior officer's room and says, "I want to leave the army." So he says, "Why?" He says, "Well, it's dangerous. Someone could get killed. That's things they're using over there. Bullets come out of them. That's bloody dangerous, that is." So he said, "I said when I signed up, I just want the holidays, the time off, and this." I didn't say anything about killing. And that's a Monty Python sketch of about 50 odd plus years ago. But it always cruises me up. But I think that is probably what, I'm only joking, but probably what's happening now in some cases. But there was talking about conscription. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine? I mean, I'm against conscription because I think that people should be in things what they want to be in. They've got an aptitude for, and not everybody has. And can you actually imagine it with what we got now? People don't know what sex they are, and
well, do you know what? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's in the Telegraph just a couple of days ago, and you know, don't be alarmed because I don't read the papers either, because that's just full of propaganda. But I think there was a certain unit in the British Army highlighted for having recruitment problems. And do you know what I would say to that, Chris? Brilliant. Because if you're thinking about joining the army, I'd like to add this to your I don't know, the British Army recruitment. Don't join the army, you buffoons. That's it. Don't join the army unless, well, let's face it, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever you would want to join the army. Okay? Get a proper job, like me. Well, which is, you know, I had quite a good position, quite a good pay from the military. I don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my time immensely, met some great people, had some great opportunities, excellent time. But let's face it, the military is not there to provide entertainment and to give somebody a sense of achievement for a career. It's there to brutalize, kill, destroy, thieve, and otherwise steal from other nations to protect the business interests of your lying, treacherous, criminal government. Why would you want to assist that? Bearing in mind what crimes, heinous crimes, that our so-called government have been involved with. I would love to put this in a more brutal context. I'm trying my best to be polite for your viewership and for YouTube.
We'll do it on Rumble. We'll be able to speak really open on Rumble.
Yeah. But all I'd say is don't become a soldier. The word soldier, let's have a look what that word actually means. Soldier, break it down, it means soul dire or soul dead. You are a meat popsicle. You become a meat popsicle with no soul. You're just a blood offering. That's it. No brain. And again, I'm not trying to be rude or impolite to members of the army who I admire, respect, etc., etc. Lots of the blokes I work with couldn't meet a finer bunch of blokes. But soldiers are essentially soul dead. A corporal is a corpse, and a sergeant is just a French term for a servant. Now, read the terms and conditions. Is that how you want to consider yourself to be? A soul dead individual, a corpse, a servant. The clue is in the words.
You're right. That's fascinating. That really is. But also, there's the mental health issues that happen, because I mean I know that all too well because my father had untreated shell shock, which is now called post-traumatic stress disorder, and of course that. I'm not blaming him or anything like that, but I heard things when I was young that I shouldn't have heard. But I'm not blaming him. Don't get me wrong. He wasn't aware of it. And, I think the world of my dad. He's passed away 14 years ago. But the thing is that there are so many that have untreated shell shock. And what makes me sad is when you see ex-service people literally sleeping out rough in the streets and on park benches and things like that. It shouldn't be. I mean, it's absolutely, and it's not as bad in America. I do not know because I'm not an American. I haven't been there, but it really is awful. But back to the chat, Haji says, why would our king allow it? Face nappies at 22. I get the gas mask scenarios, not the face snappy. Okay. Now I think we need to decipher that one. Sorry, is this in some code or something? I don't know. Do you understand? Can you get it?
I understand that. Well, what you've got to be honest. Why would the king allowed any of the last 4 years or any of the other crimes against humanity to be conducted upon innocent people? Why? Because they don't care about you. The king doesn't care about you. Nobody in the royal family gives a crap about anybody that they pompously smile at and all the rest of it. They don't care about you. They never have. They never ever will. DNA. See, 22 is a very prominent number. Have a look what happened on the 22nd by a 22-year-old, which allegedly destroyed the lives of 22 people in Manchester. That's some funny 22 connections come up there.
You must know fellow Geordie. What's his name? Richard
Hall.
Yeah.
Shout out to Richard Hall. He's been getting grief off the legal system for asking questions. Asking questions of a state sponsored by communists, I might add. And if anyone in the military still doesn't get this, they need to start really learning about philosophy. You need to learn about all these systems of governance. Get to grips with what's going on in your current world. Because I hate to say it, but what I see is a huge, monumental level of complete ignorance. I was there myself. I was ignorant. Do you know, for most of my army career, I've not give one iota thought about what happens behind the scenes of politics. Was never interested. When I did become interested and I started learning about let's just say strategy, the strategic level of things, that's when I realized that this is all criminal. We're dealing with people who have got absolutely no level of care or compassion for their fellow human beings. This is what we've got in power. People need to start.
Psychopaths.
Say again.
Psychopaths.
Psychopaths. So if the man at the top is a psychopath, you will have psychopathy at all levels. And this is what we're seeing. This is why we've got the new, well, you like to say the new world, you know what, on YouTube. This is why we've got the new world order, because the man at the top is a psychopath, and psychopathy has developed at every level because the world is subservient, order following dimwits. Start following the orders of a psychopath, and you will be a psychopath. Your psychopathy will rain down at all levels.
Well, the thing is that they become like sociopaths because a psychopath is born, a sociopath becomes. But I think that Chris the Gardener's come out a good one here. The film, thanks mate for this. The film The Men Who Stare at, I think it was Goats, was about Bert Stumblebine, wasn't it? Remote viewing and all that. Yes, it's all about remote viewing. Yes.
I'm aware of it, but whether it was actually happened for real, I don't know.
But I saw something on YouTube which really made me roll up. It showed you a army recruitment film in Russia, and they got blokes. All right, I won't be rude, but built like yourself. You would know, real sort of commando types. And it's sort of like the Russian army. I mean, it's all in Russian. And you can see these fellas throwing bloody great logs at each other and all that sort of stuff. And then it goes over to the American army recruitment. It's marvelous that they've identified my sexuality, and I think. What chance do we stand?
Yeah, exactly.
Godfrey Bloom was talking. Sorry.
Well, just to add to what you're saying, the concept of what you're saying, wokeism within the military. Well, if we were genuinely concerned about having a mighty, powerful service to protect the nation against adversaries, then you wouldn't want wusses, weirdos, lightweights, fairies, whatever euphemism you wanted to use for the woke generation. Well, I don't think the parachute regiment would get very far in battle, would you? And I'm speaking to the paras here. Would the paras be happy with wokeism having a good percentage of their manpower? Would the Marines? I don't think so, personally. I don't think they'd want. I think they'd lose the confidence going into battle with that kind of person. Why is the military allowing it? Why? Because they don't care. It's never about protecting the nation. It's about what can we do to profit from reaping the rewards from another nation, or all the other, real reasons for these situations developing. That's everywhere. You're not going to war to save the nation. If anyone thinks that, they are literally dumb. It's as simple as that. If you're in the military and you're listening to this, stop being dumb. Educate yourselves. Grow a pair of bollocks. Stop trying to defend psychopaths, maniacs, a-holes, or the royal family, the government. Stop being in defense of criminals. Stop. In fact, do you know what? I know I probably sound like I'm ranting on a little bit. Essentially, stop being something called a moral relativist. And I'd imagine the majority of the military have never even heard that term. Look it up, find out what it means, stop being a moral relativist. And let me just give a little bit of an example as to what that entails, Chris, if you don't mind. Essentially, if you are following orders and your orders are not for the good of other people, then you have acquiesced your morality to somebody else. That's what moral relativism means. It means following the instructions of somebody, even though those instructions might be wrong or harmful. You need to grow a conscience. Stop falling foul of the parameters of the guidance from your job. Remember, it's a job. Your job does not own you. I lost my job because I refused to be a moral relativist. I could have taken the medication like a good boy, like a good soldier. I could have still been employed. I could have still had my plum job and my half decent wages, working with guys I admired. But I decided to stand up for what is right. This is what moral relativism is about. People need to stand up for what is right. And again, I'd like to think that the entire British Army is going to watch this video. Seriously. And I'd like them to, instead of just slating me as being an idiot, or whatever other derogatory statement they wanted to make about me, I could not care less. I've heard it all before. I'm not even bothered. Slaughter me as much as you want. They really need to start growing a conscience, start acting with moral dignity, and grow a pair.
I agree. On a lighter note, you see, I'm no military expert, but there's one positive thing about wokeism. You see, now I do believe that the first rule of the first rule of attack is surprise, isn't it? You know, you surprise your enemy. So if the parachute regiment didn't know what sex they are and all dressed as women, and you drop them beyond the lines, you see, to criticise the enemy's curtains, that'd be a surprise, wouldn't it?
Yeah, certainly would be.
It certainly surprised the enemy, wouldn't it? They think, what the bloody hell is going on here? See, whilst they're thinking about it, they go, oh, bloody hell, you know.
Speaking of surprises, and I know in our previous conversation I mentioned this slightly, but I surprised my entire unit. All the soldiers I work with, I added them onto a social media platform, which was called Soldiers Against.
Yes.
SAS. Who cares wins. SAS, who cares wins. Soldiers against the you know what. Soldiers against the prick, let's just say.
Yeah.
I added them onto this social media platform through the early hours of the night when they were all tucked away in their bed, sleeping silently. I bombarded them with information. And the first image that I actually put on was a picture of the King, King Charles, and underneath it was a wanted for crimes against humanity. Then I put a picture of every single member of the government and certain other organizations, including the police, wanted for crimes against humanity. Then I also give them imagery from a book that I've written. It's called Vax Terminator 19.
Oh, where can you get it? Where can you get it?
You can't yet because I ain't published it, and whether I do or not still remains to be seen. But I was probably thinking of selling it for £6.66. But really, what it is a book, along with imagery that demonstrates something called a satanic mega ritual. A satanic mega ritual, which is something of a satanic nature that affects a large number of people. And so if anyone can read what's written on my shirt, they can probably have a guess as to what that's about. But if I was to give a few examples of what's in there, you can have an understanding of what my channel, Soldiers Against the You Know What, is all about.
How do you get onto it? It's on what? Can I announce where it is?
I'd rather not disclose what
I understand.
platform it is, if that's all right. But it's only open. It's only open to the selective individuals, and
Okay.
those individuals are members of the army who I've worked with, to give a bit of an idea. So in other words, members of a certain organization have got absolutely no excuse for not being aware of what's going on. Reference that. No
Excellent.
excuses. Furthermore, can I just add that a certain individual in the British military has been in receipt of my hand-delivered legal notice. So I've served legal notice on certain member of the British military. I've also read out at a disciplinary hearing prior to me leaving the military a 3-page statement which I hand delivered to several people in that organization, stating quite bluntly what this is all about and my sentiments regarding it. And I've presented quite, in fact, enough information to sink a battleship. That's what I've given to the MOD regarding this situation, this certain crisis. They've got no excuse whatsoever other than willful ignorance to define how they can turn a blind eye to the current situation. And this is what I'll quite bluntly, quite categorically say in public, that the entire British military, the entire MOD, has willfully ignored damning information regarding a certain health crisis. But the group on my social media site, I've mentioned. In fact, I had a look through the other day. I've sent over 700 images alone, along with reams and reams of evidential material, in order to enough information, we should say, to draw a fairly firm understanding of a certain health crisis. But some of the more metaphysical things I've put on there, Chris, includes that number of ignorance we've mentioned. And I'd imagine you're familiar with what's known as the number of the beast. Well, did you know that? And again, this isn't so hard to find information anymore, but that number also presents itself into a certain let's say a patent number for a certain medication, a medical product. You're probably aware of that. But
it also adds up.
It all adds up. Lockdown, for example, lockdown, UK lockdown was 666 days. The Irish lockdown, even though it had different dates, seemed to add up to 666 days. Lockdown itself, first one, as I mentioned, was announced on a date known as the Satanic Season of Sacrifice. The second lockdown was announced on Halloween. The second lockdown lasted 33 days. And again, anybody who understands Freemasonry will understand that number. Let's mention the Track and Trace Act. Do you remember I mentioned the birth date of the Illuminati was May the 1st, which is just gone. May the 1st was also the date when something called the Contact Trace Act came out. House of Representatives number 6666. Funny that, isn't it?
Weird.
Well, is it weird, or are these deliberate, or is it somehow written into the architecture of our satanically endowed world? I do not know. But it goes on, and again, I could go on with that. You know, from the public health emergency was declared by the World Health Organization on the 30th of January, I believe, And then Omicron was announced 666 days after. You could even say there was an exercise, and probably many people have heard of Event 201, tabletop exercise, but prior to that was something called Cladex. Cladex was conducted 666 days before the public health emergency was announced by the WHO. All of these things, are they coincidences, or are they facets? Let's just say these are facets on which individuals can start drawing conclusions as to what is behind the scenes of this health crisis.
This is really gripping. Now, I think that what I was going to say is you do some courses and things that it'd be nice to plug. People, was it all right to plug your courses that you do that we spoke about before we're going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it all right? I've got your email address here. If people want to contact you. It's to do with what do they call it? What we often talk about. Yeah, that's survival. So shall contact
go for it.
Here we go. Here it is. There's you. So you can contact Steve on there, and also whilst you're writing that down on a piece of paper, I'm going to give some. You see, I'm not doing the military, but I'm going to give some military advice that you probably never got, and that is, in times of war, what do you do if a woke soldier lobs a hand grenade at you? The answer is you pull the pin out and throw it back. Sorry, terrible one, that one.
Excellent.
Bet the SAS are not taught that, yeah. But I think this idea of a special platoon that goes in criticising the enemy's curtains, I think that might be a good idea, and it might upset them. I might give up them. The state of those curtains are disgusting. Have a elite parachute corps doing that. I mentioned it. I wouldn't be touched, but I said, bloody think about it. Oh, that's a good idea. Yes, we could try that. It's a bit like the First World War. I get the feeling it's a bit like the First World War situation. And the Germans were 100% correct. We were lions led by donkeys.
Yeah,
I think that's a very true statement.
If anyone wanted to be, I would say, Chris, and I mean, I'm kind of addressing the military here, and to a large degree the police, because equally as ignorant as far as I'm concerned. But essentially, that's my email address there, and I can almost guarantee there'll be a lot of people who want to send me some hate mail, whatever. Whoopie-doo. I've got broad shoulders. If you want to give me hate mail, really, fundamentally, you're only hating yourself. I'm speaking quite candidly, and I'm speaking quite openly and honestly about something that most people will not contemplate, and that's the fact that your government are criminals. Your warfare is nothing to do with the patriotic, saving the nation, euphemistic nonsense that you all believe it to be. Your pageantry behind it all is all mockery. That's why you have Armistice Day on the 11th of the 11th at 11 a.m. It's mockery. It's Freemasonic pageantry to take the mickey out of their soul dead sacrifices, their blood sacrifices. That's why they conduct wars on certain dates. Have a look at the Falklands. Have a look at. In fact, do you know what? Let me just add a couple of dates here, and people, before they start giving me grief on email, and soldiers, this is. Have a look at the start date of the Iraq War shock and awe campaign. Have a look at the invasion of Libya. Have a look at the date, the Westminster Bridge attack. Then have a look at the date that the Belgian bomb went off. Then have a look at the date of the Colorado mass shooting incident. I could go on and on with these dates. This date was March the 22nd. This date is the same date that your lockdown was announced. Remember, this date is March the 22nd. In numerical value, it's number 322. Okay, remember that number, 22, 322, 322, March the 22nd, the satanic season of sacrifice. Why have all these key events happened on that date? Pure accident? Pure, and then have a look at another event that happened this year, March the 22nd. Or what was it again? Was it Crocus City? Another mass terror attack. You're being played, you're being manipulated, you're being coerced by Satan worshippers. That's it. You can't, most people, especially the military, will not be able to contemplate this. They'll think, I'm a complete wacko lunatic, tinfoil hatter. There's my tinfoil hat. I've been in the military for many years. I'm proud to wear this on my uniform. In fact, let's stick it on.
And I'll tell you something, though, we've got nice people in chat, and I don't think you're going to get any nasty mail from us. Well, you won't at all. I can guarantee that.
I can guarantee that. And, but I can guarantee there'll be a lot of people, certainly in the military, will want to give me some grief. And again, other than the fact that it's just a waste of my time, it's because I'm not going to fall for your grief. I can understand a lot of people's frustration and anger, and probably that don't get it yet, but they need to start getting it. One of the reasons I'm quite happy to speak publicly and openly with the likes of yourself, Chris, is essentially people in the military need to see and hear from people like myself who have been in the military, who were kicked out essentially for being a tinfoil hat wearer. I was labeled a conspiracy theorist and an anti-you-know-whatter because I refused to get poisoned in a mass satanic ritual by Satan worshippers. But like I say, have a look at those dates I mentioned. Have a look at March the 22nd, 2003, the Iraq War Shock and Awe campaign. Have a look at have a look at the Kuwait oil fires, March the 22nd, 1991. Have a look at the 2011, March the 22nd, the US invasion of Libya. Yeah, this kid's got it, 11-11-11-33. The special number in free Masonic secret societies. 2016, March the 22nd, the Brussels bomb attack. 2017, March the 22nd, was the Westminster Bridge attack. This year, the Crocus City attack, March the 22nd.
You must know, what was his name there? He was on Rich Planet. Professor, he's written a lot of books. I can't think of his name. And he's been looking into this as well. It's a strange numerology thing. But now, this is an interesting one. What's this? People think Satan is taking over the world. No, it is the end of their times. Hell on earth is soon over. You've got a good point. And I think that Dan MC, right? Nurses are great dancers. Yes, I noticed that. But don't mind me saying, aren't nurses' uniforms like pajamas? They're horrible. Absolutely horrible. Yeah. It's scruffy.
Well, some of the nurses, the NHS dance videos are some of the best videos I've seen. But isn't it shameful? Why are these people not speaking out in large numbers? And I know several people who work for the NHS completely close their eye to the truth. And I'm not going to say this is the same of everyone in the NHS, but essentially, until people start mentioning and standing up for morality and for truth, and I don't care what job you're in, police, military, NHS, whatever job you're in, you need to have a spark of morality, and you need to abide by it. Forget about your job, forget about your mortgage, forget about your pension. I've lost all that, lost it all. Why? Because I'm standing up for the truth.
Well, I admire that. But
do you know what? I appreciate that. I've faced some personal hardships, massive personal financial hardships, and I'm not going to bleat on about it. If I was to tell you how much I got paid an hour, most people would laugh in my face at the pittance I now earn, to the point where I'm probably going to lose my house now. But again, I'm not after sob stories. I'm not giving a sob story. I'm just telling people need to start making personal sacrifices in their lives in order to, if they're really keen on standing up for the truth, well, this is a harsh reality of it. If you're a policeman, forget about your 30-odd grand annual pay. Walk out the door, grow some nuts, walk out the door, or demand some answers to some very difficult questions. Or if you're a soldier, refuse to soldier. And if you take a hit, like I have done, well, wouldn't you rather stand up on the right side of history than, you know, say to yourself, oh, well, at least I've managed to pay my mortgage this month. So paying your mortgage isn't going to get you on the right side of history. And standing up for the truth is.
And Daddy, what did you do in the war? And we're at war now. You can morally look people in the eye. Very few of those that are serving now.
Yeah, I agree. We're at war now.
So also you've got a fan, several fans. Aunt Sally says, brave man going against the military, bullying and coercion. Now,
well, thank you, Aunt Sally, for that.
We've got I've only got 5 minutes to go, and I've got I'm going to zip through these comments very, very quickly. Please accept my apology. I can't read everybody's out, and so don't take offence or personal or anything like that. It's just that it's not possible. We've got a lot in chat tonight, and I'm just jumping on these. 1066 equals 22. That's sail away, and
22 cards in the Major Arcana.
Right, Stephen Truthseeker. Hillsborough disaster was a satanic sacrifice. I was at the game in the middle of it. Wow.
Well, can I quickly put in there, Chris? Hillsborough happened on a date. I believe it was the 15th of April. On the 19th of April is a very important date in the satanic calendar. It's known as the Feast of Moloch. Of course, the Feast of Moloch is usually a ritual which is conducted by immolation, i.e. death and destruction by fire. Let's have a look what happened on that date. Waco, Boston bomb, the Oklahoma bomb, the USS Iowa explosion. Many things have happened on that particular date. Now, what happened this year was immolation by fire by an unfortunate gentleman who set fire to himself outside of Trump's court appearance. And then there were several other things that happened around the world that very same date. One was the stock exchange in Denmark, I believe it was. And
yes,
if anyone's really wants to get deep metaphysical about that particular date, there was a pub in London burnt to the ground. It was called the Burn Bullock, I believe. The Burn Bullock burnt to the ground. Feast of Moloch. Moloch is a bull. The Feast of Moloch is immolation by fire. And then you've got a pub called the Bullock, the bull, being burnt by fire. How bizarre.
How weird. And of course we've got, yes, Steve, every war, this is camera, since Egyptian times, all scripted. They write the plays, spells. We can break them by not following along like deaf, blind mutes, but by being real men and women with loud voices. Yes, I very much believe in, although I haven't got much time for Gandhi, what he said is you just what's the word now? You defy public defiance. You say no.
Exactly.
understanding this.
Be an anarchist. An anarchist doesn't mean without rules. And I'll just quickly say this: an anarchist is somebody who can be sovereign and act lawfully and obediently without following the rules of a corrupt, immoral governance. I'm an anarchist. I've been an anarchist in the British Army. As ironic as that sounds, for many years. An anarchist simply means without rulership. It doesn't mean without rules, and it doesn't mean acting immorally. This is all part of the inversion of humanity, is to make anarchy sound like it's about chaos and disorder. People need to start educating themselves.
And Cat Holly, quite 100% correct. And I can never pronounce this correctly. So for everybody that we're saying, we pronounce it wrong. It's the 1066 Sestiquivi Act.
Yeah.
And I know, because I'm not very good at Latin, and all, you know. So
well, this is the very thing that's causing so much chaos in society.
Hello, David J. Hello, David J. And so
are you allowed to show that flag on the telly?
Yeah, oh dear, yes. Aunt Sally, I like this guy. Very interesting tonight. I do know most of what he is saying. So most of what he is saying, but some I don't. Oh well.
Anything I mean, if your viewership on understanding some of the things or want clarity on some of the things I'm saying, I'm quite happy to come back and talk another time.
Yes, don't worry. If you'd like to come back, because you're more than welcome. Aunt Sally, and by the way, if it wasn't for Nathan, this interview wouldn't have been possible. Not interview,
thanks to Nathan.
Yeah,
I've done a few talks with Nathan before in the past. He's got some interesting things to talk about. So I'm proper on board with Nathan.
Yeah, but don't tell him he's on next week. No, he's joking.
He's stopping at mine shortly.
Well, it's amazing how many normal people, Aunt Sally, suddenly become bullies under the cover of Convid. Yes, I noticed that. These little squirts, all sort of, you know. But I'll tell you what I had. I was in the bank queuing up, and I didn't have my mask on, and I had a perfume fart. You know, the type with the stretto heels come over to me with a box of tissues. I thought the tissues, they're actually masks things, you know. It's just, hello, sir, here's your face, Snappy. So I said, no, I'm exempt, you know, and I stood there. And I had this form which said that it was illegal for her to ask me to wear one. And she just glanced at it and just walked off. Didn't say anything, she knew she was in the wrong, but I'm big, I'm offering this, and everybody standing there with all these, you know, face nappies on and whatever, you know. But I'll never forget that. I can't remember exactly though. I mean, I said it on a previous show, but you know, I actually thought it was a box of tissues because you know, but I don't know. But where she said it, you know, here's your mask, you know, as if it's accepted. And anyway, now where are we now? What we got here now? Charities for the ex-soldiers. The soldiers don't benefit, and the CEOs do. Oh, you hit a raw nerve there with me. We could do a show about this. They leave the soldiers on the streets because they don't want them to be physically and mentally strong to stand with the people. I think Steve and I might be probably go a little bit further on this on Rumble. I don't think we can go further on this on YouTube. Oh boy, haven't you stabbed me? You've got the animal prod. Oh, you know. Now this is camera.
Can I quickly mention about veterans, and especially those who are suffering, because I know there's plenty and lots of lads who do leave the forces, you know, do have a crisis, and the world becomes a slightly alien place to many people. I would like to put a shout out for support. And as much as I'm kind of dissing the entire military and telling people not to join and all of this, and I'm being quite negative towards the military, that does not mean for a second that I'm trying to have a sly dig at anyone either currently serving or as being a veteran. In essence, I'm now a veteran. I've been kicked out of the military for having an opinion, but my opinion is based on truth, honesty, and virtue. Now, the military is supposed to have virtue as part of their principles. Now, I'm not trying to knock anybody who's a veteran. I'm not trying to knock anybody who's still in the military. I've been there, and I'm not the brightest bloke on the planet, but I figured quite a lot out simply by educating myself. And I'm trying to bring a moral education to other people. We should not be ashamed of trying to stick up for morality here. And same with veterans. We've all been brainwashed. I've been brainwashed through the system that's brainwashed into doing a dirty job for the good of a wealthy corporate elite. Don't be ashamed of it. We've been there, I've been there, and I'm now stepping out of that system. And I'm proud to step out of that system. And I would like to take other people, and that includes veterans and serving soldiers, with me, because there's more to be said for standing on the right side of history, having a moral outlook, than there is for serving the financial interests of a corporate elite. We need to stop euphemizing what the military stands for. Again, this is mirrored to the police as well, because the police are following the same kind of interests. We need to start coming up with a 21st century level of higher consciousness based in morality, objective morality. Forget about what we've done in the past and how we've all been suckered into a system, into a morally corrupt system, brainwashed by the society that supported it. Let's move into the future. Let's do the right thing. It's as simple as that. Now, some of the words I'm saying here, I need to qualify with further understanding, I guess, because these are not easy principles to understand. It took me years to get to the level of understanding I've come to, but it can be done. And I'm reaching out to veterans here, some veterans, and especially those who are maybe falling on tough times or their head's not in the right place. Don't be disheartened. Don't let my words affect you to the point of detriment. Okay, there is, let's say, the truth community. If you stand in truth, you need to honor, you need to help and reach out to members of the military, members of the police, who are starting to raise their level of consciousness. And I know this for a fact. And I know this for a fact in the military, people are starting to question things and have a greater understanding, educating themselves, growing in consciousness. The truth community need to support them in that journey. And I'd like to think certainly people on your viewership would help this endeavor along its way.
I'm sure they would. And I mean, when you look at it, I mean, a moral army in many ways was the Boer army, because in the Boer War, I don't think they had ranks as such, and they fought in groups of 3, and they're almost invincible. I mean, there's this massive British army over there, well trained, well equipped, against this ragtag of. And the only way the British army could beat them was by a scorched earth policy, where they destroyed their fields and destroyed their farms and put the women and children into camps. It's the only way they could beat them, because they're almost invincible. It's quite incredible when you look into the Boer War, and I'm talking about the one from, was it 1901? That was it. But Hatchy, good show tonight. That's good. And if you can shove the old thumbs up and all that, that'd be good. So here we go. Thank you. That's lovely. And I think very valid point here from Camera. Letting women into the forces was a huge mistake. You can't jump out of planes in stilettos.
Well, I broke my pelvis jumping out of an aeroplane.
Ooh, you got a good head for heights.
Well, can I mention this? Do you know, Chris? I know you're reading through some of your comments, but let me mention this quickly. I've talked about satanic rituals in warfare, and again, I've got lots to mention on this, but I'm obviously just trying to add snippets into your show tonight. Let's talk about something very, very prominent in the world stage, which involved a very prominent British military unit, and that happened to be something called Operation Nimrod. Now, again, I don't know the understanding of your viewership, but Nimrod was you could say, was the demonic god king of Babylon. Not a particularly nice guy, if you want to go by the various deities in the various pantheons throughout history. Nimrod, Operation Nimrod, was the name given to the Iranian embassy siege. Now, I mentioned May the 1st was the birth date of the Illuminati. May the 1st is the start of a period in the satanic and pagan calendar known as Beltane. And again, I've said astrology is the science behind everything, which is why certain things happen on certain dates, because it fits in to the structure of universal energies, let's just say. So what happened on Beltane, and I think it was 1982, and there's probably many people here will claim to be the fourth man on the balcony of the Iranian embassy siege. I'd imagine everybody of a certain age remembers that. It was all over the news. That was a Beltane sacrifice. 6 people died that day. Remember that number of ignorance? 6 people. They even named a film about it. It was called 6 Days. The 6 Days of Beltane. 6 days, Operation Nimrod, Iranian embassy siege. This was a blood sacrifice to honor Beltane. But they'll not tell you that on the news. Thought I'd just mention that little bit of interesting.
That is interesting. And also, Aunt Sally's come back. She said, Chris, on Essex, is this guy in touch with the many disgruntled veterans groups on Arsebook? Well,
no, but if any disgruntled veterans want to, I'm not on Arsebook. I'm not on many social media accounts, to be honest. But if anybody wants to send me an email, disgruntled veteran, I'd be willing to listen. I actually, and again, I don't know if your audience know this, but I actually talk about occult themes. I give presentations under the name Six Blade. I talk about some of the things I've talked about tonight. I actually give presentations on with pictures and color. So some of the understanding can be brought to the wider audience. I've done talks in the past with Mark Devlin, Nathan Lucius, John Hamer. Fire me up if you want me to talk. If anyone's interested in a talk on such themes.
Yes, please. And Yorkshire Rose has summed it up to end this show.
Hey.
Love this guy. Definitely have him back on. Well, it's been an honor speaking. It really has been an honor. And thank you so much. And you can see by the chat, great show. Thanks so much to Chris to have your lovely guest. Very interesting show. Well, thanks, Steve, for coming on.
You're very welcome.
What I'm going to say, if we haven't set the klaxons off at YouTube, which we've been very, very careful here. The klaxon. I can just imagine this sort of office full of these sort of woke types. Oh, hang on, he said this. Don't know about it. We will be back next week. same time, same place, with another show. And as you know, as what I call a floater show. So the floater show is Rumble, because you know I can get onto Rumble now. And so if anything goes tits up and we have set the klaxons off on YouTube, then you'll see me on Rumble. And you'll find out on my Telegram channel, as you can see below my name here, or on me Ask About Facebook, which is below here. No, not in my crutch, but on the the description below here. It'd be links down there, you see. Well, it's been the fastest 2 hours you could wish to think of. And as I'm speaking now, I'm looking for the, where are we? The outro, which I always have trouble finding it. But this was done by the lovely Deb, this outro. And I do hope she comes back soon. She's got a few problems, but I hope that she's getting them sorted out. Thanks a million for coming on. It's a fantastic show.
Thank you. Hey, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And
thanks for watching.
Remember, however grey things look, however bad things look, have a laugh, because that's the best medicine you could ever wish to have, laughter, unless you've got diarrhea, of course. And so, thank you very much. Good night, Steve. Good night, everybody.
Cheers.
And
thanks.
Good night. Oh, and stay on in the green room as we go off. Oh, yeah. We'll have an